In case you just joined us, you're watching KBC News Check, and on this hour we are looking or focusing on war on terror. And of course, 3 days from now we'll be commemorating 3 days since the Dusit D2 attack at Riverside Drive. And now we are joined by yet another panelist who is Kevin Osido. Kevin Osido, karibu sana.
Asante, nimeshukuru.
Yeah, karibu sana. We had already started.
Yes, and I've been listening to the interesting conversation.
Very good.
I'm sorry for being late. You know, as Mr. Masisi mentioned, we have the County Engagement Forum meeting as we speak.
Yes.
And so I passed through there, and because we have the County Commissioner of Nairobi, the Deputy County Commissioners, and the different multi-stakeholders of the community are also there to basically look at the public participation process of the bill of Nairobi County to prevent and counter violent extremism. Actually,
that is where we're going to start it, but let me introduce you officially. Kevin Osido, he is the Executive Director of County Governance Watch. You will tell us exactly what they look at, but looking at what actually Masisi has talked about is that you are seeing violent extremism and also radicalization in counties. We were formerly knew that the counties bordering perhaps Somalia or something, they had that issue, but that issue is creeping up even in other counties. Karibu sana, Bwana Kevin.
Asante.
Can you tell us what you do at County Governance Watch?
County Governance Watch, as the name suggests, we watch over county governments on how they, of course, are using the taxpayers' money, aspects to do with public participation and citizen engagement in governance affairs, aspects of legal and policy frameworks that support Schedule 4 functions of the county governments insofar as running of the county affairs are concerned. And quite actually since 2015, post-Westgate attack, we have been engaging on these aspects of peace and security, but much more instrumentally looking at how citizens are getting involved in making their societies and their communities secure. And so we have a big program called the Defend My Future campaign, which is a campaign that is rallying the citizens of the Republic of Kenya, friends and partners, to be able to safeguard our communities. And therefore, you know, like Mr. Masisi said, see something, say something. And so we've been working with the center on this, the National Counterterrorism Center, on this particular program to be able to build the capacity of citizens and even law enforcement agencies to be able to also have a positive attitude towards the community. You know, one of the challenges that we have had with security aspects especially is about reporting, where you walk into a police station and you are told you're the first suspect of a case or a report which you went to levy. So we've been working with different security agencies and also law enforcement organs on this particular program, just to make it easy for citizens to engage in security and also for the security agencies to be able to be much more proactive in picking these reports and also providing feedback. So that's really what County Governance Watch does, and we have what we call the County Governance Index, therefore that assesses levels of performance of counties in all the functions that are devolved by the Constitution in Schedule 4. So that is water, agriculture, health, education, infrastructure, and also how counties are basically mainstreaming aspects that safeguard our patriotism. So that, for example, if it is a county public service board, how are they hiring people? Does the governor and his team only pick people from one community? And how does that therefore entrench aspects of cohesion and integration of our communities in the government?
Indeed, and it's a good thing that you've mentioned that you're talking about the future. You cannot talk about the future when you're not talking about the youth, and the youth are on the receiving hand when it comes to things like radicalization, and especially in counties and a county watch. And the high unemployment levels are pushing the youths towards violent extremism. As a county watch, and you've talked about the forum itself. How are we supposed to deal with this so that we may ensure that our youths do not fall into that prey?
So 3 things that we have seen happening. One of the things is, of course, government affirmative action programs. And if you talk about unemployment levels or poverty levels in our country, the the segment of population that is worst hit is indeed, as you rightfully said, the youth. And interestingly is that government has come up with almost 11 different affirmative action programs. Most of them are aimed at, safeguarding or giving the youth a safe space to be able to either have your capacity built if you're already in business or you're an entrepreneur that is doing very well but you have gaps that could probably be related to things like aspects like value addition or finding market for your goods. So government already has agencies, that are supposed to engage with young people. So what we are doing at County Governance Watch is to provide linkages, where, for instance, we identify these young people, these groups, and we write letters and use the kind of networks that we have, such as the National Counterterrorism Center, the State Department of Youth Affairs, among several other government, both national and county government organs, to be able to provide those linkages. The second thing is to undertake assessment of uptake of this affirmative action program, so that, for instance, how much does a county like Kiambu or a county like Mandera or Lamu have for young people who are at risk? And how has government made it easy for them to be able to access? And a youth at risk and a youth who would want to probably take advantage of that unemployment situation, if you look at their lifestyles and some of the tools that Mr. Masisi was mentioning, and you begin to assess their lifestyles, a lot of these people are not people who will show up in a nicely dressed suit like myself. So most of them are people who probably have given up. They are hopeless and they imagine that nothing good can come from them. And some of them probably don't even have national ID cards. So if you look at some of the requirements that government has put in place for them to be able to submit to benefit from some of these affirmative action funds, then most of these young people who are at risk then are left out. So what we have done with particularly engagement with the State Department of Youth Affairs is to try and work with the CEOs and the fund managers of these funds to see how the government can be able to give them a cap off, so that some of the requirements are either lessened and made easy for them, so that it is exciting for these young people to begin to apply or gain interest, in application of some of these funds. The third thing is, of course, to look at what we call the policy and legislation angle, which is therefore to look at, does the government, both national and county, have policies that will give strength to the youth to be able to see value in why it is important for them to be involved, so that they either create jobs or get involved in those job creation mechanisms. So what we have done as an organization is to work through the Council of Governors, what we call the development of county youth action plans, which really look at the context of that young individual. What is the best thing that you can do within your county? And so has the county government put in place a mechanism to safeguard what you want to do? So that, for instance, if you go to Kisii and there is a lot of soapstone carving, has the county assembly passed a law that would also lead towards on-source revenue by supporting that soapstone carving artisanry work that the youth are doing? Has the social development officer, helped them to register so that they are able to benefit from some of these funds? Because one of the requirements is that you are actually registered by the government. And so without that registration, it becomes difficult for you to benefit. And that benefit, so that you deal with aspects of unemployment and encouraging these young people to not just look at government as an employment agency, but also looking at how they can be able to, on their own volition, come up with mechanisms and methods of, creating employment. We do the fourth thing, which is working with government agencies to build the capacity of these young people. And we have had very many forums, including just yesterday when we convened about 384 young people of Kasarani sub-county of Nairobi to be able to look at the opportunities within the sub-county and how they can be able to benefit, and not necessarily look at government as the place to get employment. And definitely, of course,
you are keeping the youths away from violent extremism.
Precisely.
And radicalization. Masisi, grief, pain, regrets characterize victims and families of people who have undergone perhaps a terror attack.
Yes.
As a center, do you offer psychosocial support to these people who are victims?
Yes. As a center, maybe I touch on what Osido has just said about the push and pull factors. Many people who are radicalized or recruited into terror groups, they have grievances. So these grievances are brought about by the push and pull factors. The poverty, education, marginalization, those geopolitics issues. So the government is really doing a lot to address these issues, like issues of free education, issues of kazi kwa vijana. You know, they come up with initiatives that try to keep the youth busy and also engaged, whether it's money-wise or through activities, so that they are kept devoid of violent extremists. And then when we look at what the center is doing, the pillar for psychosocial pillar really addresses many a times. If I give you an example of a suspect and a victim, who is many a times given more focus, it is the suspect.
Actually the suspect.
They'll be given transport, they'll be given food in the cells,
security, tight
so
security.
What happens to the victim?
Yes.
So we are saying that the victims of terror, those who have been hurt, those who have lost children to terror activities, what do we do with them? So we counsel them, we engage them in forums, and we talk to them. We learn from them. What did you see with your child? How did you know they went to Somalia or something? Others will come and say, yes, I think my child is in Somalia. Why do you think your child is in Somalia? This is the way they were behaving. So we take up that and we try and sensitize that if this victim would see this in their child, would it be a lesson that we would like to give to other parents, so that they can also have those early warnings to tell on what to do. So there's a lot of psychosocial support that we give at the center, and also trying to bring them on board, because again we know youths radicalize each other.
Yes.
A brother will radicalize a brother. So if you have lost your brother through terror, what is the likelihood that you also join a terror group? So we also keep abreast with what is happening with that family, so that at least we can build the resilience and also make them see life on the better side. Yes.
Gentlemen, and this is something that always comes up when we have an attack on patriotism and nationalism, because it is alleged that mostly people know who these people are because they live among us. And in counties, it's quite simple, because now we are seeing different counties, people from, as Masisi has talked about, from Western, from Lower Eastern, as a county watch. What is the level of radicalization that you have seen, and especially in counties? And how are you working with the Counterterrorism Center to ensure that these youths, there are some who come out and say, I was in Somalia, I was radicalized. How do you help these people? And how can we help them? Perhaps Masisi will chip in with that, will add on that.
One of the things that we have done and continue to do with the support of and capacity building mechanisms from NCTC is, of course, the creation of safe spaces. And these safe spaces are not, from our way of looking at it, is not a place where maybe you will see very high level security intervention. It's purely maybe a border network, you know, a women group somewhere, a youth center, like what county governments are today doing, where counties are putting together social halls where young people can walk in, and is more or less like a one-stop shop where you can just go in and sit and ventilate or get somebody to talk to, particularly through the psychosocial issues. And the county action plans, which Mr. Masisi also spoke about, have really been quite a platform where we have seen young people now taking advantage of, and just because of the fact that it brings security agencies closer to the people, because these are security officers who sit with communities to discuss their security and peace mechanisms or peace building mechanisms, and how there's citizens or young people can be able to also participate without necessarily looking at security as something that is only left for the government. And so from our and interventions, as I mentioned earlier on, is to look at the policies that have been put in place by the counties. And as we speak, the Council of Governors is also one of the agencies that we have worked with very closely, and through their security committee that is led by the governor of Tana River, we have had very deep-seated conversations around how these national government programs that are being managed by State Department of Youth Affairs can also be devolved. And you know, when you talk about that, it's difficult to say that there is national government youth and county government youth. And as you said, the cross-border interventions of counties, and particularly looking at the regional blocks, like Jumuiya County, Pwani, Lake Region Economic Block, the counties have unique features that therefore feed into each other. And so we have asked county governments through their departments of youth and education to look at those common features, therefore that can be able to excite young people to not look at Nairobi as the best place to go to, or look at Mandera as a exit route towards, you know, radicalization and then coming back to attack people, but to look at how can you be able to add value within your county government, even if there is nothing that you think is coming out of that county. And we have seen quite a number of young people now thinking beyond, you know, what the government can be able to do, to look at what is it that I can be able to do, and what are the opportunities that exist within our county governments. And the beauty of it is that through the offices of the governors, they have also put in place on the budget some funds, which is more or less, it looks like an affirmative fund, but is purely left for young people who feel so vulnerable. And how we have seen counties creating or taking advantage of the safe spaces I was talking about is through sporting activities, where in many counties they have months or days when they have just set it aside for sporting activities. And so as civil society organizations, we take advantage of those platforms and move in there and invite NCTC for public awareness sessions, invite the county commissioners for security briefing sessions, and sometimes even prisons, because some of these young people are people who have been to the prison and back. And so,
Kevin, do the young people know that this program do exist? Because at the end of the day, they are geared, or they are focused on the youths, and especially you've talked about the most vulnerable.
Yeah.
Do they know that these projects are there, and especially in the counties?
Yes, through awareness. Of course, I know that convincing them to see the value and, you know, basically the benefit right now, like instant coffee, gratification becomes very difficult. It has to be different, and it has to be seen differently by youth from being given 50 shillings or 1,000 shillings to gratify your your right now need. But through the interventions that are constant, and the kind of networks that the young people have organized, because that is how we help them to benefit from some of these interventions by the government. So I will say that yes, the young people know, but if you look at their interests and the desire, which is really about how can I benefit from what you are doing now, the waiting period then becomes a challenge, because most of them are looking for my immediate benefit as opposed to working towards the system to be able to benefit maybe at a later stage. But how the center has been able to work with us in this particular aspect is, of course, through coming forward to be present, build the capacity of young people. Mr. Masisi and Mr. Njenga and the others have taken us through the radicalization process, the terrorist planning circle, and so that knowledge and information really becomes very critical, and that is how we use the safe spaces to be able to also infuse the knowledge around prevention of violent extremism and radicalization.
Masisi, how do we help youths that come out and say that, I remember there's an incident where some youths went to Somalia, they were radicalized, they were promised that, I don't know, I think $1,000 per month, but the money was not forthcoming, or the parks were not there, so they decided to come back. Yeah, how do we help such kind of a person? Because we need to reintegrate this person back into the society.
Sure.
But that person is not the person that left Kenya, went to Somalia, was radicalized and came back.
Yes.
How do we help that person? And especially the young people.
Yeah. So as a government, the national strategy on countering violent extremism has a priority on delegitimizing and rejecting all efforts of violent extremism. So as a center, when we face these returnees, because we refer to them as returnees, we have a program, it's called DDRR. DDRR stands for disengagement, de-radicalization, rehabilitation and reintegration. So number one, we disengage. So how do we disengage? We disengage you physically. We disengage you in terms of contact, so that, because the more you contact them, the more they will radicalize you and give you an ideology that you need to actualize.
I'm not under custody at the moment, right?
You're not.
Okay.
So when we disengage you, we disengage you physically and contact-wise. Then we de-radicalize you. So we have the ideological pillar that we are calling interfaith. So we bring in the specialists, who are the sheikhs, the imams, who actually know what the Quran is speaking about, what are the true narratives that these young men need to know. So with the intervention of the imams, we de-radicalize this youth. They are told the truths about their faith and what they are supposed to do about their faith. Then now we rehabilitate them. They have been there, excuse me. So they have probably been involved in terror fighting, and now coming back to Kenya to maybe perform a terrorist attack. But then they see that, no, this is actually not my calling. I need to go back to who I was. So we rehabilitate them back to the normal state of a person. So we have agencies, we have partners, CSOs, who come in and try and rehabilitate these young people. Then now we reintegrate them back to the society. So how do we reintegrate them back to the society? You can go back to school, get a KCSE certificate, get your degree certificate, diploma certificate. What do you want to do? I want to start a car wash, I want to start a boda, I want to start a business. So we have those support mechanisms that we help this youth come back to the society. It is a risky affair. It is a dangerous and risky affair, because as government, as we are disengaging, de-radicalizing and rehabilitating them, the terror groups are also following them so that they can go back to the cause for the terror group. So we really have to be very careful when we are disengaging, de-radicalizing, rehabilitating and reintegrating this youth. And again, we have seen scenarios where, yes, the youth have come up, they say they were in Somalia. We don't have the empirical data that this youth were in Somalia. A certain organization comes up, gives them bodas, and you find many other youth coming up and saying, oh, even us, we were in Somalia, which is not true. So we also have to verify.
I thought they would be afraid that they would be arrested.
No, they are seeing the incentive and
the perks.
These returnees are getting. And again, this program, we take it to the enforcement agencies, because how does a special operation officer in Wajir, in Lamu, when they see a youth returning in full Al-Shabaab gear, how do they react? The first reaction will be maybe to shoot this young man, this young person. But through that program, then they can see this person has surrendered. This person is the one who is giving himself up. So there must be something, so that when we take them up, we are able to get more information. We are able to know who radicalized them, who recruited them, and so the program really works well with the returnees.
Indeed. Have you witnessed the same problem? Because the program that is talking about is more or less like the way a person is released from jail and now is rehabilitated into the society. Have you worked with the same program?
We have witnessed those kind of interventions, and in fact that's why initially I mentioned the aspect of affirmative action.
Yes.
Because there is just this much that government can be able to do. And as I mentioned, there are also young people that in their getting back to be reintegrated, they don't probably want to be identified. So what we have seen happening is how to therefore amalgamate them into ongoing programs like car wash businesses, the border networks, things that then give them the opportunity to also feel like they are accepted, appreciated back, and what Mr. Masisi has mentioned has been quite fundamental, especially from Nairobi County, and we have seen the assistant county commissioners, the deputy county commissioners, basically the county security intelligence committee being very critical in terms of, you know, being the first person or the first people to receive some of these young people, because the aspect of security then scares them even away from the community. And in the event that they want to get back, even those who are from prisons, one of the things that we have done and keep doing is to organize common events, like I mentioned, the soccer plays.
Yeah.
And we have had a number of them, and even other organizations that are also part of the County Engagement Forum, organizing soccer events that bring together some of these youth that have been either brought back to the community and they want to feel accepted, playing together with policemen. And you see, after that event, we have conversations, and that's how we have also been able to see the de-escalation of a number of terror attacks, even in Nairobi, because now there's a lot of sharing of information. People are beginning to say, I saw this happening, what does it mean? And even from capacity building aspect that NCTC does with most of us, is to be able to also empower them with information, that if you see this kind of thing, it means this. If you have a friend or a neighbor who is behaving this way, begin to, you know, report to the nearest police station, and if you go to the police station, this is how you make your report. And we have even had sessions where we help them understand what the OB number means, how it is done, and basically the implications of those kind of reports. And it's been quite positive in terms of attitude change, acceptance by these young people, and then also attitude change from the security agencies. And so we have seen a lot of, you know, joint sharing and common engagement between security agencies, the youth groups, and a lot of this has been successful through unconventional means, like car wash sessions. You could be a deputy county commissioner who takes off your official uniform, you drive your car into a car wash, just like any other person, and you begin a conversation. And we have seen those kind of attitude elements really being quite instrumental in dealing with the war on terror in Nairobi.